Next Wave Gaming.
Welcome everyone to our EU Wildcard analysis. I am Coleman from Next Wave Gaming, here with Scotch, Shadow Venom, and
Bird. The one and only.
the one and only Bird. Before we go into anything, let's do some introductions. My name is Coleman. I write the ranked articles on the Next Wave Gaming website, and I'm also the support player for our newly founded competitive team.
I'm Scotch737. I do the video editing for Next Wave Gaming, and I laugh at Colme.
Thanks.
Hey, my name's Shadow Venom. I do a lot of analysis, mainly revolved around EU, and I now coach the team Colme has found.
And I'm Omagana Bird. I'm the analyst or assistant coach or whatever you want to call me for Team Aquila.
Okay. First off, congratulations on the cognitive sponsorship.
Thank you.
It's pretty big. So let's go first off into picks and bans. Shadow, you want to take us into that?
Sure. This week we had quite a few appearing in a lot of the games. I'm trying to figure out if they're anywhere in all 6. I think not. But we have Vulcan, who was picked 5 times and not banned, surprisingly. And for an unsurprising one, we have Geb, banned 5 times and not picked. And we have Thor, picked 3 times, banned twice. Followed up with Var, picked 3 times, only banned twice. The Mana, showing up, banned 4 times, and picked 0 times. It's quite surprising in all honesty. And New Arm, making a showing, banned 3 times, picked 2 times. So yeah, quite a lot of involvement from quite a few cards.
It was nice to see all the Vulcan play and Nova Mana this week. It's really nice to see that.
Yeah. Well, I want to just take a look at 5 Vulcan picks, 5 Geb bans. Why? Why does EU love Geb so much? Where NA was like, we'll ban him once. We'll pick him 7 times.
I think most of that comes down to us, actually, since 3 of the Vulcan picks were ours and 3 of the Geb bans were ours. So definitely something on our part there.
Blame those guys.
Yeah.
I think for Geb at least, we just don't feel like dealing with him because he prevents our snowballing, basically. Like, he's one of the main reasons you can't snowball a game. And we saw it last week when we were against SK. We had the lead, and we just couldn't snowball it because we couldn't pick off Geb and go Gold Fury and stuff. So it's just a nuisance. It's a problem. And Vulcan, of course, it's pretty prime. What do you expect?
Which I find is interesting, quite interesting, because before because they changed him twice since they re-released him.
Yes.
And before, when they just brand new re-released him, everyone was like, he's trash. He's still bad. He's still bad. And then they add some small damage changes and some small, like, ability timing changes. And now I see Vulcan in every ranked match. And it gets so annoying because sometimes I have to lane against him. And I can't do my typical, drop my abilities and run back. It's, okay, I just took a meatball to the face and a backfire. Great, I'm at half health. All right, awesome.
It's just like Zhonghui syndrome. I mean, Zhonghui was 2 times as strong than when he came out than he is now, and no one played him when he came out. So it's the same thing here. It's just people are finding his strengths and are able to really utilize them.
And I talked in the NA video about why I'm starting to say forget about banning Geb. Just because there's other picks that you can get or other bans you can get. Like, you can ban other gods that are top priority. Especially since the pickup of Freya ADC. But it's interesting that the EU says no. We don't think so. Geb is going to stop us from snowballing, like you said. And I do agree. It's in certain points, he's just too much. He's too much. He brings way too much to the table sometimes. I
think in this case, in this wildcard here, I think probably we wouldn't have banned Geb. Like, we might not ban Geb in a LAN scenario, for instance, but here we knew that like in all the games last week, and we know from experience against these teams that we're going to have the early game. So what do you do if you have the early game no matter what? You pick whatever, you ban out whatever they can use to get back into the game, which more often than not is Geb, and a lot of Vamana too. Hence why we banned him like 3 times.
You know, something I saw with the Vulcan pick, especially Pretty Prime playing him today, and it's a little bit different, you know, because Naw in the NA is known for his Vulcan play as well. Although he hadn't played him but twice in the SPL, but he won both games. Is the placement of the meatball, especially in jungle fights, is so interesting to watch. Especially if you like go back and just rewatch the replay of the team fight. Pretty Prime's meatballs are not just a meatball, not just a meatball. You know, if they finish off the god and kill him, yeah, that's one thing. But he aims them so well to either knock them straight into a wall or knock them back towards your team. And I thought that was something that I picked up on today. That I was like, I think it's, you know, now we got Sylvanas coming out too. Knockups are very, very valuable in this game. That's the reason Geb, I think, is so stout. Not just because of his shield, just because of his knockup. He interrupts whatever you're doing. So if you're trying to run away, or if you're trying to cast an ability, or you're trying to do whatever, you got that knockup. And a knockup is just as strong as hard CC. So, well, I guess it is hard CC, but you know, it's just as strong as a root or a stun or something like that, because it not only cancels what you're doing, but it prevents you from being able to do anything while you're in the air. So, I just
I think it's kind of like there are several levels of a Vulcan player. There's the first level where you finally realize the strength of your meatball and backfire combo, and you start using it more, and then you have to actually get away from that if you want to reach the next level, because then it's, yeah, I want to do my meatball and then ult. And then there's one more level where it's, I'm just going to meatball them so they go in a certain direction. And once you have that final stage, then you can be Pretty Prime, no, whatever. But you need to forget the last stage in order to get to the next one, which is really hard for a lot of people, especially if you're playing like, if you play a lot of ranked or something, you're going mid, and your whole game is focused about poking out the other mid. And once you can start to get out of the mentality, you can start using the meatball in more, I guess, valuable ways, not only for yourself, but also for the team.
Alrighty. Well, with that, let's go and head over to the next form, our next phase of this. Let's talk about the ADCs. Over the wild card, our top ADC was, I don't want to pronounce this wrong, so I would let
Ataraxia?
Ataraxia has a 1665. Right behind him is Real ZX with a 1623, and then it falls a bit by a huge number, if you want to say it. It's Sun Touch with 1174, and then Shaggy Shank with 1154. Why do you think? Is it because Agilitas just said, or sorry, not Agilitas, Aquila, sorry. Aquila said, yeah, we're winning every game. We're not going to lose. Is it because of that? That's why the ADC score is so high? Or is it, let's take it to his player damage. He has the highest overall player damage with a 95,000.
I think one of the biggest factors is his build, to be honest. A lot of people are disliking the build, the no crit build. It's been around for a longish time. I mean, Crit invented it, if you will, a long time ago, said he had math supporting it, but no one really picked it up because, like, Crit is clearly the best stat on Hunter, and a lot of people agree with that, and in some scenarios it can be. But if you do the math, if you look at the graphs, if you look at all the numbers behind it, you can really see the strengths of the build that Ataraxia uses, which is basically, it gives you true damage on anyone that doesn't have defenses.
Yep.
And that's insane.
Well, it allows you to face tank and box, you know, chalk solos.
Yeah, you can fight anything.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that can really stop you except several people, and that scenario doesn't really happen because if you're a good ADC, you're not going to get yourself in that scenario.
Exactly.
So the strengths of the build that he uses is that, sure, you delay your power spike a little bit because you're going Dev Gloves into boots, and then you're going Shin Scythe, and that's going to delay your build a bit from Executioner. That would give you a bit quicker damage. But since you're waiting that extra 800 gold or whatever, then you're getting a bigger power spike, and from that point on, your damage is just above any other build, basically. Like, you're eliminating the slow early game from that point, or slow mid game rather, from that point on. And with that, you just rack up more player damage because you're starting to get it earlier.
Yeah, you're actually winning the mid games of the ADC then.
Yeah, exactly,
Without crit items.
Yeah, which normally you wouldn't do.
Yeah, and you're, with chin size instead of a crit item, a crit, you don't know when you're gonna crit. You have no idea how much it's actually gonna be when it does crit. So chin size, you know exactly how much each basic attack is gonna hit, and Ataraxia hits his basic attacks.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but you also have the ability damage. Your crit isn't affecting your ability damage, neither is Executioner. Like, how often are you going to walk up to someone as Anher, hit 3 auto attacks, and then impale them? That just doesn't happen. But if you have the 15 flat pen from Asai, you have the 20 flat pen from Brawlers, then suddenly you have 50 more pen or whatever on the impale, which you're using first. It just does so much damage, especially on the squishier targets.
And
that combined with lifesteal, of course, is just insane.
And he also played Rom 3 times.
Yeah.
And Rom's damage is that old damage is incredible. Well, let's look at their farm, their GPM. He does have the highest with a 537, Real ZX with a 524, Shaggy Shank with a 466, and Sun Touch with a 420. And now, a few of these games are kind of skewed because Team Coast forfeited the rest of their games. I think it was like 2 or 3 games. So the numbers are going to be kind of skewed a little bit because not all the games are played. But overall, you can see who's the dominant ADC overall. Real ZX keeping up really close, who played pretty well, had the same amount of wins as, well, I guess you can count it the same amount of wins. But the one loss that Ataraxia took was not that bad when you compare it to the Freya loss.
I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that, 1, he has just more assists.
Yes.
Like, the team together gets more kills. And 2, he doesn't die. He has 9 deaths in, 7 games, I guess?
Yes.
So that says enough on its own.
Yeah, and his kills death is dumb. It's 31 kills, 9 deaths.
Did y'all see him dive in today with his ult and he walked into the power buff camp and we were like, no, what are you doing? And then he just mez the whole team and walks out.
Yeah.
It's just it's fun. It's interesting to see these players move on and do the stuff. With that being said, let's go over to the jungle. Shadow, you want to take us on that?
Sure thing. Leading this week was Replicas with a score of 1572, and it drops by almost 200 down to Adapting with 1393. Shortly followed by Zeros from SK, 1349, and then Zindern finally at 1329, even though he didn't play any games this week.
So, granted, the Zindern leaving Coast kind of hurts his score in this week, but overall, he's still pretty much there. The games that he played, he added and contributed a lot in order to be 20 down from Zeros. So, okay, the Replicas. I'm looking at this. His GPM is the highest with a 518. His player damage is the highest with 87 and almost 87.6 thousand player damage. 87,000 player damage. Just incredible amounts of damage coming out. You can look at the god picks. Went with Nemesis, Thor, Humbat, Serket, and Kali. The best god or best KD, I guess you could say, the best he played was with Kali. Running with a 7, 2, and 13. GPM was the highest with the Kali with a 640. Even the player damage was actually not all there comparative to the Thor, but just the farm and the kills is what helps, especially with Kali. Because Kali can just run in and say, "Oh, you're my target. I get a 25% gold bonus. Thanks for the free kill." It's interesting. It's interesting to see these junglers because if you look at the NWG wildcard, their junglers are kind of underperforming a little bit as compared to the EU, where the EU is relatively close between the 3rd, 2nd, and 4th place, where in the 1st place it was just by a mile. But
One thing I think I've seen just out of the challengers teams coming into the wild cards is between Replicas and adapting, they have a lot to offer for their teams compared to some of the other EU junglers. And this is coming from somebody that's watched the Smite esports scenes for a while. It seems like the EU scene, you have like a rise and a fall. The junglers are not really that consistent, whereas we're seeing some really consistent play from both these players.
Yes.
Yeah, I would definitely argue that those two are if not the top two, at least both within the top five, because those are two of the best junglers in Europe, flat out.
Yes, and adapting wasn't that far behind in most stuff. Zero's had the closest farm to Replicas, but he did almost as much player damage total as Replicas.
The thing with those two is that they're really similar players that no matter how their team is doing, they're always ahead.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at Replicas, look at his only loss is Bots. He's 6-2.
Yeah,
like
6-2.
They're always ahead no matter what.
Yeah.
Like they just don't fall behind, and they're just such good players that they're always carrying.
And you can look at the god picks too. It's there's 2 Thor and 2 Freya and 1 Mercury pick on adapting, where Replicas has 2 Bots, 1 Thor, a Circuit, 1 Kali, and a Nemesis. So yeah, he's spread his god pool a little bit better than I guess you could say than adapting did. But his jungle is just consistent, and that's what the numbers are proving, that his jungle is consistent no matter what.
Replicas especially, like, we talked both these weeks in preparation for the wildcards. We talked a lot, like, we looked at a lot of our drafting, we looked at a lot of our comps, what we were going to do with them, and we came out with so many different picks for jungle, like all the things we can do, have spreadsheets on like what can we possibly do with all this stuff. And it just came down to Replicas never gets to choose what he's going to jungle. We're just giving him whatever, and he can play it.
Nice.
That's
And
good.
That's
always
that,
good to have.
Yeah, and that it works out. I mean, sure, he has a god pool to some extent. He's not going to go playing Vulcan jungle like Zeros, but like he can play anything that we really need him to play.
It's nice to be able to rely on.
Well, with that, let's go over to the mid scores and let's check that out. Pretty Prime sits at number 1 over for the wild card with a 1648. Pretty close, about maybe 80 points. Behind him is Captain Twig with a 1574. Then it drops heavily down to Carino with a 1371, and then Arrow with a 1350. Now, the picks that these guys have played are pretty out there. They're not the usual picks as you would see in the mid lane. You see the Isises and the Raws and the Vulcans; those are pretty consistent. But then Carino said, "You know what? I'm going to play Odin mid. Let's see how fun that is." And it didn't really work out.
No.
It got shut down pretty hard. But you get the return of Agni also. It looks like here. Looks like Agni was played twice last week. Once by Captain Twig and once by Carino. With a 50-50 win-loss. So
Agni did really good last week, but this week was all about the Vulcan, man. Vulcan and Isis.
The Vulcan and Isis picks were just fantastic, I think. A lot of people underestimate Isis. Like, her snowball is incredible. That Spirit Ball will chunk you with a quarter health at, 4 or 5 minutes into the game. Yeah. In the late game, it's going to take you down to at least a third. So, those are good picks there. The Vulcan pick, though, I just hate Vulcan.
No, Pretty Prime's ults. I mean, it all comes down to something we've talked about before, which is synergy with your team in the comms. All right, I'm gonna be doing this in about 2 seconds, so go ahead and start ulting. And you know that he's gonna be there, and he's gonna either confirm the CC on the target or whatever. But the ults from Pretty Prime on Vulcan were amazing. And
still on point.
And Captain Twig, using the Isis ults the way they're supposed to be used. But yeah, I just thought it was just amazing play coming out from both of those top 2 mid laners this week. Especially since we might even start seeing some Vulcan bans when it goes to regionals.
We might see that. I mean, the player damage alone, total, Pretty Prime sitting on a 133,000 player damage total.
Yeah, I mean, you can just look at the difference in the first 3 games where it's Isis, Raw, and then if you look at the 3 Vulcan games, just his confidence in the god gives him so much just extra utility for the team, and he can do so much damage, especially in the game against Coast there. Like,
Exactly.
he just had so much damage. Like, what are they going to do? It doesn't matter if they pull ahead. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter what they do, really. You can't beat 36k damage in a, 36-minute game? That's like 1k damage per minute.
Yeah.
How are you going to beat that?
He was doing so much damage. And look at it, it's the disparity with the raw damage. Granted, his healing was there. That's where his damage went. But 12k, 19k. Next game he played Vulcan, 22k right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then he tripled his first raw game with his Vulcan game with the 36k. Like he's been doing great with Vulcan, and I think if teams are gonna start thinking of ways of beating out Aquila, it would be banning out that Vulcan.
But
Yeah,
what
the
do you
problem-
leave open though?
Yeah,
Exactly.
the problem with that is that we're talking Pretty Prime, who has he has 7 legendaries in mid. Like he knows every god. He can play every
He
god.
does have a
Yeah.
fair few
Like,
X cards.
Yeah, I mean you can't ban him out no matter what.
Yeah,
Sure,
it's-
you can take away his best god, but what is that really going to do? Are you going to give him Janus? Are you going to give him Isis?
Yeah.
Like there's not much you can really do about that.
Exactly. It's like Divius.
That's the problem
You
with
can't
mid
ban
laners, isn't it? You see Pretty Prime and Captain Twig, who all you have to do is simply check their profile page, and you have to scroll down to see the amount of X's they have, the amount of X cards they've mastered, and then you try and ban them out, and it's like, oh yeah, but I've got this card, I got this card, I got this card.
Yeah, if
And
I ban
Can't
this,
ban this out.
that's what we was talking about last week. You know, if I ban a Raw, then I'm going to get Isis Ball to the face for 600 damage at the
Yeah.
18-minute mark.
You pay for what you ban.
Exactly.
So you ban Vulcan? Sure, I'm just going to slap you in the face with this instead, you know? So is that something you've taken into consideration, considering the last 3 games Pretty Prime's played is Vulcan? Are you anticipating a Vulcan ban?
To be honest, we were kind of like we always anticipate it. We see a Vulcan 3rd ban as often as we see anything else banned, really. And I think the reason we really tried to get Vulcan, like our priorities were like Thor, Vulcan, Raw, and Afro. And if we
Mhm.
got 2 of them, we just made the team all around that. And
Gotcha.
since those aren't necessarily top bans, then we usually get at least 2 of them, if not all 3. And then once we make a team around that, then we can just do whatever strategy we've deployed, and usually we can nail it. I mean, that's a lot of the reason we chose Vulcan in the first place, is that he's so good for invades, because he can just go and disrupt everything.
Yeah.
So we just walk up like we did today. I mean, in several of the games, the other team didn't even get a red buff, because we just walk up with a mirror, an ADC, and then with Vulcan. What are they going to do, really?
I think that's something that we're starting to see like a repetition of, and you know, I hate to say this again, but something I've noticed in between doing both the NA and the EU videos is what the SPL and the Wildcards, you know, the Challenger series coming up to the Wildcards has come down to is I can't ban out this guy. I can't ban out Comfrey. I can't ban out Dirge, Divios and NA. I can't ban out Pretty Prime, because if I do this, I'm gonna get this, and you really have to, a lot of the game is figured around that picks and ban stage. I don't think a lot of people realize it so much, but you build a comp that works together, and if you can't build one that works together, you can build one that individuals can excel at. That way you can focus on different areas of the map, instead of having to worry about so and so because he's got a guy he's very comfortable with because they banned this. But that's something that, as the game progresses and goes on, it's going to be harder and harder to do.
Yeah. And speaking of that harder to do, especially towards the late game, that's where solo lane starts taking effect. They start, adding stuff to the game and to the team fights. So let's transfer over to that. Our first place is Maniac with a 1902. Second place right behind him is Confrey with an 1814. Dips down a little bit to Proxy QQ with a 1618, and then it drops down even more to Variety with a 1436. So I'm looking at the gods, and I look at the player score and says, how did he get that big of a player score? I'm looking at it, and Vamana.
Yeah.
Maniac's a bully, man.
Vamana. Like, he plays Vamana 3 times and wins all 3 games.
That's the reason he's banned this weekend.
That's why I think Vamana was banned this week. And that was in the first week, I do believe.
Well, one of the main reasons that he was played a lot this week. I mean, Maniac's a bit special because he's been playing a lot of Vamana. We knew that we're going into it. We said, okay, he's going to play Vamana basically no matter what. He'll pick it into anything, and because there's nothing really that counters it other than Bakasura, who just happened to be banned out this week because he's bugged. So basically, what are you going to do then? You pick Vamana because what's going to counter him? Nothing really. The only thing you can do against Vamana is stay even with him, or maybe like rotate faster, or just be more useful to the team, or just completely shut him down early game.
But you
And that's
can't
still
zone him
hard
out
to do.
late game. Yeah, it's still, if it ever gets past 15-minute mark, he's still the big baby, and you can't stop it.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem we had when in our very first game. We talked about this game a lot. Like we spent a lot of time analyzing this game, and it basically came down to the fact that we let Vamana through, and we didn't have a hyper carry. We didn't have anything that could deal with him. We had an entirely CC based comp. Like we looked at the game and we saw like, okay, we were here in right lane in the solo lane sieging their towers for a solid 5 minutes straight, just picking them off one after another, just taunt and raw snipe, and you can only do that so long until the baby comes online.
Yeah.
And once the baby's a big baby, not much to do. They just figured out you can all in with Vamana, and there's nothing we can do because we didn't have a Heavenly, unfortunately, so we couldn't really disperse like we were supposed to be able to against Vamana, so we just lost to that flat out.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if you go down to Confrey, and he's Ra twice, Nuwa twice, Chalk once, and Aphrodite once, and his top god that performed well was Aphrodite.
He's so good with Aphrodite.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. His Aphrodite had a 25,000k player healer in that one game.
Yep. I mean, it's the thing that another thing that we just consider a long time after analysis, like, okay, so do we really want double healers? Do we want the Rod and the Afro together? So we basically we decided, yeah, so we first pick Raw, and then we see what they pick, and we either put Raw in the solo lane or the mid lane. And if we put it in the mid lane, we just get Afro, and we have a double heal comp, and sure, they can weakening our Raw heals, or they can weakening our Afro heals, but they can't weakening both. So either we go into a fight, we commit to a fight, they're weakening our Afro heals, so we back out, we get the Raw heals, then we go back in. And that's the beauty of a double heal comp, is that you always have potential to sustain in one way or another. You have to basically choose, and either works just fine.
Yeah, and
exactly.
You have a mid and solo laner that can both play that and play it very
Yeah,
well.
of course. I mean, these are two of their, if not the best, then two of their top 3 gods. Like, where they are good players with these gods. So.
I want to just take Proxy with the Shivalanke solo and did well.
Yep.
Lost with Serket solo, lost with Vamana solo, lost with Hebo or Habwa, and lost with Ra. And his worst game was with Serket. Absolutely just got shut down.
Oh yeah, he got shut down hard.
It's hard. It's hard to do that. And I can see where he tried to do. He tried to get that. Try to do maybe run an assassin solo, since Mercury isn't completely viable in the solo lane anymore. So maybe Serket with her damage, her proc on her 1 with the crits, she can clear waves pretty decently and pretty safely, because she can dash through abilities and such like that. And then you go up to Variety, the Vamana. He lost with Vamana, with Ra twice and Zhang Kui. And the Zhang Kui, I've noticed in the EU, is highly coveted. So, what makes you think as a player? I want to say Shadow. What makes you think that this happened? Like, why did Nuwa do well and Zhang Kui did not?
I think that just comes down to the individual matchup and the fact is overall, I don't think the God picks matter too much. I mean, we see Xbalanque solo winning. That's not saying like, oh, Xbalanque solo should be a thing because Proxy did it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's more about the matchup, the individual player skill. All that comes into effect. Mechanics come into it. We've had Sayo in the past say Maniac is the scariest solo laner ever. Which I'm going to throw a question at you, Bird. Who do you think the scariest solo laner is in the wildcards?
Zalio. Or okay,
Zay-
in the wildcards, my bad. In the wildcards, probably Maniac. Not necessarily because he's a better player, but because he has such a god pool, like such a big god pool that it's really hard to shut him down. And he knows his matchups. He knows what to do. He knows when he's going to come online. He knows when he can start being aggressive. He knows when to rotate, and it's really hard to focus him too because he knows when he's overextending and stuff. So it's really he's just really scary.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny when Sao said that his opinions on the top two solo laners were the two guys in the wildcards, Maniac and Comfrey.
Yeah, I mean the thing a lot of people say this about Comfrey is that he was a mid player and he switched over to solo lane and that he's a bit inexperienced. He doesn't know all the matchups perfectly yet, and whether it's true or not doesn't really matter. The point is that he can go and rotate and he can win the game.
Yep.
And he has such valuable input throughout the whole game, not just as a player being able to be there, but just in TeamSpeak. Like he says so many valuable things that are completely unrelated to him. Like he'll say over to the other side of the map, he'll say, "Yo, you need a ward. You need a ward up there. You're gonna die if you don't have a ward up there." And the team listens, and it's always just valuable input from him.
Nice.
Speaking of valuable input, let's talk about the last role here. Let's go over to support. Shelly, you want to take that over?
Sure thing. Taking the lead this week was Badger from SK with 1558, followed by pretty closely by Kanye Life, 1539, and then jumps a bit to Dirgius, 1366, and then another coast, Princess Tomato, 1305.
Badger's positioning has improved so much since well, I'd say probably the past 4 weeks. I think Badger had some, which led to SK having some, which pushed them back in the bottom two teams of the SPL. But his player positioning in team fights and also his pathing has improved greatly. I just want to call him out on that.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I saw the game when he played Bacchus, and his pathing wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't safe. It was that if an engagement happens, I'm there.
Yeah.
And I can make an engagement happen too, because his positioning was so well. A lot of supports like to take the route over the buff camps, like the speed, and go over to the mid camps that way. And he's just like, no, I'm going to go straight towards the mid camp and be right behind it in between the Gold Fury and the mid camp and just wait.
Yep.
So I'm going to wait.
And he always knew when his cooldowns where they were too, and
exactly
that makes a big difference on Bacchus. You don't jump in unless your team's there, because if you jump in with Bacchus, you're dead, and nobody's there to follow.
pretty much. And he took and mitigated the closest amount of any player. He took 100,001, and he mitigated 100,000 and 106. So he's using his abilities and his positioning and his I want to say his build perfectly. He's using his items to where he knows, okay, I have Bulwark. I can jump into this fight and live.
Yeah.
Like he's his positioning and everything like, and plus Bacchus ult. It's like, oh, get out of free jail card, Bacchus ult and run away. Because for some reason, no one seems to beat Bacchus ult.
Yeah, and it does so much damage.
Everyone just runs around, and they never beats it. Now, Bird, let's take your input on it. Why do you think Badger and Kanye have the highest? Is it because they're winning more, or is it because of their overall methodical processes as a support player?
Kanye's walls. Just
yeah,
it's really two things. They're really different players in the sense that Badger likes to play a lot more defensive supports. He comes more into the actual support role, like he wants to be there and support his team. but he does make a lot of sloppy mistakes. And when it comes to being aggressive, he makes a lot of mistakes. Like he'll jump in when his team isn't there, and he'll play it a bit sloppy. Which, since he's a support and he's so tanky, doesn't really get punished that often. But in the end, like his defensive plays, he can save the lives of his team so many times. And like as I mentioned before, when we were going up against them in the very first game of the Wildcards, we gave them the Geb, and he flat out alone prevented us from snowballing the game.
Yeah.
It was only him, just flat out. So he has the potential to bring his team back into the game just because he's so good at playing defensively. And as for Murder or Kanye Life, he's just such a good support. He knows he's been playing support since he started playing Smite basically, and he knows the role so well, and he's so good at being an aggressive support. That is the one thing that he can do better than any other support, is that he can go and take the red buff, he can go and take the speed buff, and he just does not care.
Yeah.
Someone tries to come kill him, he's gonna kill them instead. He doesn't care. I mean, you can see on the stats alone, like he has 4 kills and 23 deaths, which is probably the worst out of all of this. I mean, we have Badge at 11-14. Princess Tomato we can't really count because he lost all the games, and then Durgius at 14-26. So 423 is the worst. Yet he has 87 assists because he's always there, he's always fighting, and he always does more damage than anyone else does.
His player damage is ridiculous.
He's got the best Ymir walls in the universe. I swear.
Well,
I swear they're so good.
Speaking on his aggressiveness, look at the gods he picked. He picked Athena, Ymir, and Ares.
But yeah, I mean, it comes down a lot to the fact that every time Kanye blinks, it's a kill.
Yes.
If he uses blink, it's a kill. And if it's not a kill, it's because he saved someone's life.
Yeah. So,
like, how often do you see Kanye blinking into mid and getting the first blood for Pretty Prime? It happens in probably about 75% of our games.
Yep.
Like, he's so good at just, like, he does the thing. So we'll go to red buff, take the red buff, they'll leave the red buff, Pretty Prime goes back to mid, now has the advantage in mid, and Ataraxia goes back to lane, Kanye starts following him. Kanye turns around, blinks, kills Zonkui in mid. That was our first game against SK.
Yeah.
You're not going to expect that. Like, they got the red buff. That's a win. So we go back to lane. Nah, Kanye wants to kill.
Yeah.
And it works so well because he knows anytime he blinks, he knows whether or not it's going to be a kill. And if it's not going to be a kill, he just doesn't blink to begin with. So he has such situational awareness, and he has such just general awareness of the game that he knows when he's going to get something out of his abilities or his blink or whatever it is. He knows when it's going to be a win. And the second he knows it's a win, he starts the next play. So we get a pick, go to Gold Fury. And he knows, okay, we're going to get a pick here on red buff. I'm not going to use my ult because right after we do this, we're going to Gold Fury. So I'm saving my ult and we're going to use it on Gold Fury.
You know, something that I saw today, I heard the casters say a little bit of this and a little bit of that. His first Ares game, he got picked on a little bit, but he still played it well. But then you saw the difference in between the first game he played Ares and the second game he played Ares, because nobody wants to deal with his walls in Ymir, right? So all right, well now I'm just play Ares, and you're not going to be able to stop my team. Yeah, you might be able to kill me, but I'm gonna at least get a gut rip off on you. You might kill me in my ult, but that sets up, oh, you just wasted my beads, or wasted your beads on my ult. Now my carrier, my solo is going to come around and kill you in the back anyway. But I thought it was just amazing just to watch his performance increase between his first and second Ares game just the other day. It was pretty fun to watch.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you look at his games, and it's like, yeah, okay. So he has most deaths on Ares, and he has no kills on Ares. Then he has 17 assists, which is the most out of any of the games, and he has 14k player damage, which is double the second best at 7k. And then he has 37k damage, or 38k even, damage taken, and he has 26k damage mitigated. Like, all right, so you killed me, and now you're dead.
Yeah. It's good.
Now, with that wraps up our player analysis. Now we have the LAN, the regional LAN coming up for the EU, and the brackets have been finalized. With it looks like actually they have not been finalized yet. Interesting.
I thought they.
They should be. It should be first. These in the semifinals, Exposed Secrets and Mortality are already there, first and second seed. And then there's 2 quarterfinal games to get into each of those. And it should be Cloud9 against us and TSM against SK.
All right, so
we'll be
let's-
going up against Exposed if we win, and the winner of TSM versus SK should be going against Mortality.
alrighty then. Let's take a look at that then. So let's go with Cloud9 versus Aquila. Scotch, who do you think will take it?
I'm going straight with Aquila on this one, man. Or Aquila. I'm sorry, I keep saying Aquila. Yeah, I just think they're coming out really strong, man.
Okay, Venom.
Right. I think this is a solid win for Aquila here, mainly for the fact that C9 can't hold a roster together. They're not secure, they're not stood on the ground, they can't find their own feet sort of thing. Whereas Aquila are much so the opposite, with Bird here proving that, they have their own analyst. They have a solid roster, they know exactly what they're doing. They seem very efficient now. It's all about, okay, what can we do this? Can we do that? If nothing can be done, they don't do it. They don't, I would say, follow their hearts as such. It's always, can we get anything out of it? Nope, don't do it. They're very, by the textbook it would seem, they're going to win it. I think it's going to be 2-0.
Yeah. It's kind of like I think F. Dot said today, the whole if they find an inch, they make a mile out of it.
Exactly.
I think they really do it in small bursts, and they do a really good job of it. They're very methodical, and it's really hard to shut that down, especially as good as they are at it.
Bird, what do you think?
I mean, naturally, of course, I'm biased, so
Well,
I have to give it to my
obviously.
own team.
Obviously.
So I always have to give it to my own team, but the reasoning there isn't necessarily because I'm biased, but rather because a little bit of experience. And we have some history with Cloud9 in scrims and in tournaments, and I think that itself gives us a lot of confidence going against them. But I think it's a lot of what Shadow said, is that we have better planning than them. We have better drafting than them. We're not really ranked players. We're here for competitive play. We're not coming from ranked. And with that said, I mean, we have so much potential to just outthink them. Like we're coming into the games with more of a plan than they are. And that's something that we prioritize a lot, is that no matter how far behind or ahead we are, we always are giving each other a plan in the game, and we always have a plan before the game. So I think just based off that, we probably have better chances.
Alrighty. I would like to see Cloud9 just because Young Bay, but I don't believe it. I don't believe that Cloud9 can take it. I think Aquila, back when they were Agilitas, I was looking at them saying, okay, well, they're probably going to be the #1 team to go into the region land. I think they are the ones that we need to look out to and look out for, because they are just brutal. Like, they go into a game, and like F. Dot said earlier with the whole to give an inch, take a mile. The fact that though the I want to say the situational awareness of the entire team is there, I don't think that Cloud9 can come back from any objective. Like, even if Cloud9 takes a Fire Giant, I think Aquila would just turn around and say, all right, come in, try to get us. Oh, look, you burned everything, you're dead. Like, it's even with a Fire Giant, I still or going up against a team full of Fire Giants, I still think Aquila can take it.
Yeah.
So next up is the TSM versus SK Gaming. Scotch, what do you think?
This is a hard one. I'm gonna give it a TSM, but I think it's gonna go the whole duration.
All 3 games?
Yep, all 3 games. It might even come down. I don't know. Let's see. Is there a possibility? I don't know, man. SK's playing very well. Y'all had a comeback win against them your second game today, but SK's playing very well. We all know that they're really good joust players. They can win their lanes easily, and if they could just take advantage of the lead that they create early, it's kind of like the Fat Chunks thing in the NA. Just keep pressing the throttle. But these EU teams, man, they're so hard to do that against because you've got Aquila here that's so good at planning, and even today you saw a great comeback from I think it's an 8,000 goal deficit y'all came back from, and
Yeah, something like that.
and but any team in the EU can do this, and so I'm gonna give this one to TSM, but it's gonna be a hard fight.
All right. Shadow, I know who you're going to say, but I'm going to let you say it anyway.
I'm not biased, I swear.
Uh-huh. So,
Alright, but they think I'm some sort of SK fan. And
I wonder.
I'm not, I swear, right? But I think SK are gonna take it, given their previous LAN results, and if they can stick to the tactics of their smaller fights winnings, and just make sure TSM don't do TSM things, they should be perfectly fine.
Are they doing a boot camp?
I think they are. I would assume so.
I'd
Being on
hope
Germany.
so, because good lord, they did
that last time for the 50K
They
LAN,
dominated
so-
everybody in the opening.
Yeah, this LAN's much more important. I would confidently say they're doing a boot camp.
That's the reason I said it's a hard call, man. That's a hard call.
Bird?
I'm giving it to TSM flat out 2-0. Not because they're better players, not because they're a better team, but because they're more committed. You can tell they're committed. They got ShadowQ as a coach. Not a easy decision for ShadowQ, so clearly he thinks there's something there. But it just goes to show that they're so committed to the game right now. The only reason I would see SK really taking it is if they manage to abuse Zimstar coming in the ADC role. Smek was not probably their star player, but he was up there, and he did carry a lot of games from time to time. So I would have to say that TSM they're just more committed. They really want this, so I think they have a better shot.
I miss Max Artemis. Sad face.
I mean, it's just to pick up the trade I guess you can call it a trade, that TSM and C9 did of Smek and Youngbay. Like,
yeah,
the pickup of Smek was pretty big. Everyone's like, oh wow, TSM's going to be a powerhouse. And then they get worked. And now they're the third seed when they were the #1 team in the world last year.
Yep.
So it's interesting. It's an interesting shift of power because SK got completely destroyed at the last year at the LAN. Same thing with Coast, and C9 did okay, but they still got worked. And you see a change now. It's like SK has finally said, you know what? No, we deserve to be there. We deserve to be at Worlds. Ignore what we did last year.
Captain Mid, man.
Yeah, exactly. They're doing everything they can to get there, but it's not TSM. TSM has the establishment of just everything. Like, their players are phenomenal players. They just, like Bird said, they want it more because they have something to prove. Where SK has something to prove, TSM has more. Where they're like, okay, we are the #1 team. Let's prove it. We're the champions. We're the world champions, essentially. Let's prove it.
Y'all got an Apollo skin.
Yeah, like, I think TSM. I'm gonna say TSM. I think TSM will take it. But I don't think they'll take it in 2 games. I think it'll be 3. I think they'll lose the first game. I think SK, because of the LAN that they just won, the momentum that they got from the Wildcards, I think they're ready. I think they're ready to take it. Sadly, I don't think they will. I think TSM will take it. And I think the third game will be a raffle stomp. I think TSM will just destroy them because they will pick out their weaknesses and exploit it. And with that, because I don't want to get into the what-if scenarios of, mortality and exposed secrets, who's going to fight against them and who's going to beat them and blah, 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 because we don't know that. We just know of the games that are concrete, which are the first week, the quarterfinals, we would call them. So with that wraps up our EU wildcard analysis video. I am once again Colme. Thank you for everybody in X-Wave Gaming. That includes Scotch here and Shadow Venom. We would like to thank Bird for stepping in and chiming in with us and hearing us talk about why his team is great and patting them on the back.
No problem. Do it anytime.
Yeah. And where can they find you, Bert? On social media.
On Twitter, you can find me at cogaq_bird. You can find me on Twitch as Oh My God, I'm a Bird. And yeah.
Okay. And once again, I am Colme, and from everyone at Next Wave Gaming, thank you for watching. If you have any comments or any things you guys want to see or hear, some stats that we didn't really cover, or anything we didn't really cover, just mention in the comments below, and we'll get back to you. Thank you for watching.